Hello, this is Pastor Micah with Life's Journey, a United Church of Christ. I hope all of you had a wonderful Labor Day weekend with time to celebrate and relax with friends and family. You can see some of the results of my Labor Day behind me. Paula and I spent the weekend finishing up clearing out my old house, which finished its closing process this week. And we spent some of the time, in addition to that, emptying boxes, including boxes with art and paintings like this one in the house, from my old house, that we sorted in and put up in different rooms here. I know with balancing two jobs, working on the one hand, a strenuous job with hospice as a chaplain, and also pastoring at Life's Journey, I've learned through this to cherish the moments of rest like Labor Day. Not only can I get tasks done on a weekend like Labor Day, but also I can spend precious time with my wife, with friends, with family. Taking that time is so important. In my work as a hospice chaplain, I can't tell you how often I find people who say to me they wish they'd taken more time for their family, for their spouse or their partner, for the people that matter, and less for work and stress and business. Every year, a day like this is a reminder of what matters. As I often will tell people when they ask me my views about work-life balance, you need to give of your best at work, and that's true. And best volunteering at the church, and that's true. But in both of those areas, you've got to remember your job will never love you back. And so you got to also take time to invest in the people who will love you back, the people you love who love you in return. And times like this remind us of this. The lesson of Labor Day connects with what we've been studying in Scripture as a church as well on Sundays. This past Sunday, we looked at the challenge of Revelation 13 and 19, which shows Christ victorious over what the Bible calls the powers that be, the powers that threaten to oppress and dehumanize people in our world. We learned about how we have to stand against injustice when we see it, lest we become its victim as well, losing our humanity along the way of compromise. We were reminded of our need to speak up and act up for those facing injustice and oppression. This coming Sunday, we'll be looking at the ultimate final hope Revelation gives in its last few chapters of a heaven we all can share in, whose doors and gates are always open for all, a heaven where there will be no more sadness, suffering, sickness, or pain. We will reflect together on how that hope can both encourage us in the here and now in tough times, but also, just as importantly, inspire us to make this world today better in answer to the prayer Jesus taught us that says, "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." As I think of what through line connects this past week's text and this coming, I think of what Labor Day is about. It is not just a time to go to the beach or to grill out, though we all do that when we can. It is a day also set aside to remember all those who fought for fair labor practices for workers in our country and the continued struggle that exists to not give up this fight. One person in Christian history who was a big part of this fight was the Catholic lay leader, Dorothy Day. And I shared about her a few years ago during Women's History Month. In her book, The World Will Be Saved by Beauty, Dorothy Day's granddaughter, Kate Hennessy, tells the story of her grandmother, Dorothy Day. Dorothy Day embodied the principles of building bigger tables and not bigger walls, dedicating her life to fighting for the rights of the poor in ordinary working class. Dorothy Day didn't grow up part of this class, but grew up in a pretty comfortable, wealthy life. But she chose to leave her life of comfort behind, bridges across the divide, making tables where people of all backgrounds, workers of all types can share. In the midst of the Great Depression, when people were out of work in droves, and even those who did not work, who did work rather, even those who did work, did not often get enough to get by. Sounds familiar. Working, not always having enough to get by. Dorothy Day chose in the midst of this to work for a more just world for all, which is one of our values in the United Church of Christ. Motivated by her Christian faith, Dorothy Day began a series of hospitality houses as a part of the Catholic worker movement, inviting those with wealth to share with those without. The Catholic worker movement took in the wealth, took in the many who were not wealthy. The Catholic worker movement took in the many out of work, hungry and homeless people of all backgrounds affected by the economic bottom falling out of our country. Dorothy made her motto that Christ died for each one, even for the very worst. So the gospel takes away our right forever to discriminate between the deserving and the undeserving poor. Every time I hear that, I want to say, Dorothy, you're hurting my feelings. I don't know. That feels pretty a tough call, but it's with hearing. Dorothy opted to turn no one away, to give everyone a chance at community, at food, and at meaningful work. Among the poor Dorothy Day's movement supported was not just those out of work, but also the working poor who could not afford housing or food or health care enough for their families and themselves, despite working day in and day out. She summed up her calling and the calling of her Catholic worker movement by saying, what we would like to do is change the world, make it a little simpler for people to feed, clothe, and shelter themselves as God intended them to do. And by fighting for better working conditions, by crying out unceasingly for the rights of workers, the poor, and the destitute, the rights of the worthy and unworthy poor, in other words, we can, to a certain extent, change the world. We can work for the oasis, the little cell of joy and peace in a harried world. We can throw our pebble in the pond and be confident that its ever widening circle will reach around the world. We repeat, there is nothing we can do but love. And oh, dear God, please enlarge our hearts to love each other, to love our neighbor, to love our enemy as our friend. As we continue this study of Revelation, as we end our celebrations of Labor Day for this year, Dorothy Day's vision is still relevant today. We hope to make this earth here more as it is in heaven. We need to work to improve the lives of ordinary working people. We need to work to build a world where wages are fair, so that if you work an honest day's work, you have enough to pay your bills, feed your family and yourself, and get health care without going bankrupt. We need to work to build a society where everyone has that access, where all people have space for Sabbath, where the rest and relaxation with their family, time to connect with themselves and God that I got to experience a little over Labor Day, and that the Ten Commandments says that it's a society we have to build. But so often we rob from others. For God made us all to be human beings, not just human doings. Until our world provides all of these for all kinds of workers, we fail to live out God's best for us. Let's hear this call and this challenge of Jesus Christ. Let's ask how we can use what we have to widen our tables, making room for all, rather than building greater walls to keep others. Hope to see you all this Sunday in worship, both in person and on Facebook Live. Until then, God bless. See you soon.